We plan to produce 2.1 million barrels of oil and around 3.5 billion cubic feet of gas. These are ambitious figures. We have plans to develop the refining and production sectors. We have a lot going on, but all we need is some stability.
Let's get more on this now from Stephen Schork, who joins us from Villanova in Pennsylvania. He's the founder and editor of the Schork Report, which analyses the global energy industry. Welcome back to Money Talks, Stephen. We've seen a recent rally in oil prices, which has culminated in Brent crude, which, as we know, is the international benchmark, passing that $70 a barrel psychological barrier. What would you say is the main driver behind this rally?
Well, at the rally, the current point right now is mainly impacted by fundamentals. It's that part of the season. Right now, crude oil demand in the northern latitudes is at its weakest point. This is because towards the end of the winter, we go into our refinery maintenance season. So the refinery, keep in mind, is the only person in the world that actually has to buy crude oil. So they're buying here in the United States 1.5 million barrels fewer today than they will be over the next 2 months. So what we're seeing now is a combination of a bubble in oil prices that imploded in the third quarter of last year. Oil prices bottomed in the low 40s, mid 40s for Brent back in December, and we've been on a steady climb higher. And that steady climb has been a residue off of oversold conditions. So right now the market is back in balance from a pricing standpoint. And as we look forward to the summer driving season, the peak demand season, we're getting that normal lift in price with expectations with increasing demand. Now, when you throw Libya into the case, this is a serious matter. Now, keep in mind, Libyan oil has not gone missing from the market. It's not expected to go missing from the market. But just the quality of Libyan oil, it is some of the finest crude oil in the world. Why is it fine, some of the finest? Because it's very light, it's very easy to refine and make into gasoline. Now, in 2011, when we had the overthrow of the Gaddafi regime, we did have the civil war breakout and we lost. The market is lost a significant amount of Libyan oil. So this prompted the United States, in conjunction with the IEA in Paris, to have a coordinated release of oil from each other's strategic petroleum reserves to quell price. So we're not at that point yet, but the driving right now is the fact that demand is set to rise. It's very normal. Oil prices at this time should be rising in anticipation of demand. The one black swan out there now is the threat to Libyan production and Libyan oil to the global market.
As the violence in Libya does escalate, we have OPEC who's continuing their drive to tighten global supply. Do you believe that OPEC should perhaps reconsider that if the violence in Libya continues?
Only if the violence gets us to a situation where we begin to see Libyan oil taken off of the market. Keep in mind, we're now in this decade, the first 8 years of this decade, the market has grown accustomed to wild fluctuations with Libyan oil exports. For instance, when you measure the volatility in the month-on-month numbers, there is a 140,000 barrel day variance month in, month out. That is 7 times greater than the variance we were seeing in the production numbers for the prior 2 decades. So the market has certainly learned how to negotiate these wild swings in access to Libyan oil. So at this point, no, OPEC should not revisit the issue of trying to rein in production. It would only come to a situation similar to 2011 if the fighting really does expand, if the rebel forces do take Tripoli and then really begin to threaten the meat of Libya's oil production in the western part of the country, then yes, of course, Saudi Arabia, Russia, so forth will have to step in and revisit the issue. But I don't think there's any call for that at this time.
Okay, and we've had the Trump administration today designating Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. The US has previously said that military leaders has used this force to exert control over Iran's oil and gas industry. Are you worried that perhaps that might affect oil prices as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly have a lot of ingredients going into this summer driving season with a lot of geopolitical headlines. We have the situation in Venezuela. We have this nascent issue now in Libya. We have this decision right now with Trump on Iran. So there certainly are a lot of headwinds. And let's keep in mind, that's only on the supply side. We also have to take into consideration the demand side of the equation. And of course, we have certain signs of a pullback in industrial growth here in the United States, in Europe, in China, of course. And this is all, of course, a residue of the ongoing trade spat between Beijing and Washington. So there's a lot of unknowns, known unknowns going in. So when we focus on the supply side, to your point, with the geopolitical risk to supply out of Iran, Libya, and Venezuela, we also have to juxtapose that with potential demand.
Stephen, much to talk about, but we will have to leave it there. Sorry to interrupt you.